said he's a Primal. I can only assume he's Noir, the original Black.
Jaine's panic said everything. A primal demon, Noir himself, was working for me. That's right. Diablo isn't just some butler. And those new girls he recruited, they're Primals too. Now King Gazel is starting to realize just how terrifying my forces really are. Before we see the rest of the aftermath, please leave a like, drop a comment, and subscribe to the channel. It helps the algorithm share these episodes with more fans. And if you'd like to support the AI narration, subtitles, thumbnails, and rendering costs, check out the Patreon link below for early access. Now, let's head back to Dwargon Command. Gazel, king of the dwarves, stared at the scene on the big screen in front of him, stunned.
This is just...
Jaine, Dwargon's elderly archwizard, did not let the agitation on his face pass unchallenged. My liege, your agitation is showing on your face. Don't tell me you're still that naive about this. Vaughn, Admiral Paladin and Supreme Commander of the Dwarven Force, answered before Gazel could. Ah, Jaine, you say that, but how else are we supposed to react? All conventional wisdom about warfare is being thrown out the window. It was understandable. The large screen provided by Rimuru's new technology showed warfare at its worst, projected to them as it happened. Even to the usually jaded Gazel, it was something extraordinary to witness. Dolph, captain of the Pegasus Knights, breathed a tired sigh. This certainly turns conventional wisdom about war on its ear, doesn't it? He went on, measuring the threat with a soldier's eye. Not even a Legion magic barrier could block that tank's attack. Face up to that without knowing anything, and defeat is inevitable. But while we have every right to be terrified by it, we can handle it by building trenches and earthen walls. Just like it was foretold to us. They all nodded. One wall would not be enough to keep the shells at bay, but multiple layers of defensive walls could very effectively tamp down their power. That countermeasure was based on Rimuru's knowledge, and although the battle ended before it could be put to use, the video footage had convinced them of one thing. This was not an overwhelming weapon that rendered them totally helpless. Vaughn studied the enemy's formations. Looking at the Empire's equipment, I'd say their main focus is on medium to long-range strikes rather than close-quarters combat. It appears they've eliminated their heavy armor and are using light equipment instead? Jaine answered from her research. Yes, I've looked into that. It seems the Empire's invented a new type of arm called a Spellgun that allows even junior foot soldiers to easily wield magic. Furthermore, some of their troops are armed with guns, an otherworlder weapon it seems. With that, they apparently think the era of close-quarters combat is obsolete. I can hardly blame the Empire for thinking the era of swords is over then, Dolph said gravely. These so-called guns could apparently penetrate iron armor without much difficulty, and the large tank force seemed capable even against stout city walls. It all but made a mockery of the weapons and armor that were the mainstays of dwarven industry, but Gazel pushed back against that conclusion.
We are in our world, and not another one. Tactical theories that work over there are pointless if you can't incorporate the presence of magic into them. Is that what you're saying?
Jaine nodded. Indeed I am. The Spellguns are a threat, yes, but they did not match up well against their foes. Lord Rimuru has a large number of scale shields obtained from Charybdis. He was kind enough to give us an ample supply, but they allow us to cancel out most magic. With magic a real presence, they had the ability to defend themselves against many modern weapons, even as they neutralized the enemy's magic skills. Thanks to that, today had been a disaster for the Empire. They had specialized too much in mid to long-range offense, and when the enemy came too close, their abject vulnerability became clear. It was a major tactical blunder.
But it all depends on who's controlling the reins. We have to make the most effective use we can of the intel from this war, lest we fall into the same traps.
Such was Gazel's conclusion, but truth be told, the real issue came well before tactics and weapons. He had not quite willed himself to bring it up. His concern lay with the individual strength each of these monsters was showing. Gobta and Ranga and Gabiru went without saying, but even the monsters serving under them seemed to have grown an incredible amount. They also made extremely liberal use of recovery potion, allowing them to engage in hazardous battle tactics. Thanks to large-scale production of the Hippocute herb, they were now cranking out huge supplies of potion, a far cry from times before. That too had disrupted the norms of battle on this planet.
Don't say it. I know.
Yes, I'm sure you do. But this is something I think we must bring out in the open. Gazel said nothing. Jaine took that silence as affirmation and began. Those demon girls, there's just something off about them. The one that set the flying ships afire used nuclear flame, which is classified as a ritual magic. It'd be damn difficult for even me to pull that off alone. But the real problem is what that white-haired girl did. That was Death Streak, a forbidden spell, one deemed uncontrollable. Everyone listened in silence. Just in the few days they had spent together, even a casual observer would realize how far beyond the norm these demon girls were. Henrietta, the night assassin and leader of the Dwarven Kingdom's dark agents, had looked into the new hires brought on by Tempest. Diablo, Rimuru's close advisor, had seemingly brought them in out of nowhere. They were demons, and rumor had it that they were old acquaintances of Diablo. Rimuru explained that they were intelligence officers tasked with observational duty over the army divisions. Gazel assumed they were much more than that, and he seemed to be right.
I thought this might be the case.
Jaine turned toward him. So, my lord, do you have any idea who these girls might be?
Yes, but you'd be much happier not knowing.
What are you talking about? After seeing such an unbelievable battle unfold, I'd be more terrified if I didn't know. Jaine was right. The fighting skills of these demons were the scariest thing of all about this day, enough so that even Gazel had been staring at the screen, muttering that this had to be some sort of joke. Jaine steadied herself. Well, I'm ready for it. If you became that emotional after seeing that, King Gazel, I have a pretty good idea of what it is. The group nodded at her grave foreboding. Gazel looked at the faces of his trusted comrades in arms, Dolph, Vaughn, and Henrietta, then steeled his resolve.
Back during that one night at the festival.
The festival? Jaine asked. When you were invited to the Monster Nation, you did attend a secret meeting alone while you were there, didn't you? Henrietta added. We were standing by in the next room over, but what happened then?
Well, I saw Rimuru's secretary, or butler, was it? You met him as well, right?
Henrietta remembered him. Ah yes, Diablo, quite a gentleman. Vaughn's memory was less comfortable. Certainly one with a threatening air about him, though. What of him? Everyone who participated in the Tempest Founders Festival was acquainted with Diablo. Henrietta had been undercover guarding Gazel, so she knew the names and faces of Rimuru's top staff. Only Jaine, who had been holding down the fort in Dwargon back then, was wholly unaware of what was coming as Gazel dropped his bomb.
According to Olmesia, Diablo is a primal.
A stunned silence fell over the room. Jaine's face paled as she spoke, hoping she had mistaken him. Wait, what? What did you just say, King Gazel? Reality was cruel to her.
I said he's a primal. I can only assume he's Noir, the original Black. That's the only one not previously bound to a claimed territory, and there have been sightings of him all.
King Gazel laid out the facts as flatly as he could. He sounded dignified as always, but Jaine was not fooled. Wait! Wait, King Gazel, wait a minute!
What's wrong?
What's wrong? Jaine shot back. A primal Noir is working for the Demon Lord Rimuru?
That's right.
That's a big problem, isn't it? Why were you silent about it until now? Jaine was screaming at the top of her lungs, but the assault was not over. Dolph and Vaughn looked for any hopeful angle they could find. Then, what about Testarossa? And Ultima, too? Oh, come now, that'd really be too much. They're probably just old demons under Diablo or whatnot, right? Henrietta shot down their hopeful conjecture. That's not all, she said. Diablo has recruited several more people from parts unknown. Hierarchically speaking, they're meant to be his subordinates. But their diplomatic attaché, Testarossa, Chief Prosecutor Ultima, and Chief Justice Carrera have known each other for a long time, and all four of them seem to treat each other as equals. Vaughn could barely take it in. Whoa, are you serious? Dolph groaned over the practical side of it. Lord Rimuru's far too loose with his legislative appointees. Jaine, meanwhile, had reached the obvious conclusion. 3 people on the same level as a primal? But we just saw 2 of them do that. Everybody there wanted to deny it. But after reflecting on what they had just seen, all of them had to arrive at the truth. Testarossa's and Ultima's strength was massive. Not even Jaine could fully estimate it.
I told you you'd be happier not knowing.
No one answered him.
That is to say, I feel bad that I kept quiet about Diablo, but what would telling you all have accomplished? If he was spreading evil, that'd be one thing, but I have a firm promise from Rimuru that he'll keep him in line, and I'd like to believe my former training partner at his word. But never in my wildest dreams did I think he'd bring on more Primals.
Bit late for that, everyone in the room thought. But as they all saw now, being aware of that would not have changed much.
Look, when I decided to trust in Rimuru, that's when I cast my lot with him. He's already got the Storm Dragon. It's a little late for regrets now. All of you need to settle this in your mind.
It was not that simple, but Gazel had a valid point as well. Vaughn was the first to answer. Well, I'll trust in you. If you believe in someone, I'm not going to complain about it. Henrietta followed. Yes, I've seen Lord Rimuru with my own eyes, and I agree with my lord. He deserves our trust. Dolph bowed his head. I am your shadow, my lord, and I will follow you in your thoughts. Jaine let out a long sigh. I trust him too, you know. I had an audience with Lord Rimuru even before he became a demon lord. What I'm scared of is that he'll assemble this vast concentration of forces that we can't deal with any longer. But you're right, it is a little late for that. If we can't deal with it, there's no point considering ways to. Everyone nodded deeply at Jaine's words. If there was no way to come to a conclusion by thinking about it, the problem essentially had no answer. They had only two choices, trust in him or not.
Well, we'll put that topic on hold.
With Gazel's final statement, the issue was shelved. But this was not the end of the war. Not hardly. The troops who had been looming large at the Dwarven Kingdom's central entrance were now fully eradicated, but they were still locked in a standoff with the Imperial army at their east gate. There were still hints of disquiet around Rimuru, the capital of Tempest, as well.
Damn that Rimuru, though. Even after such a huge victory, he's still not satisfied? I'd hate to get on his bad side.
Dolph offered another possibility. This may not be Lord Rimuru's will, though. There's a chance the Empire still hasn't called off the invasion because they're unaware of this defeat.
That's a strong possibility.
Gazel nodded at Dolph. If the Empire was aware of it, they would definitely abort the mission at once. Jaine cut in. And also King Gazel. I'm sure even the Empire is using magic to coordinate their forces. But well, you see how the situation has changed in an instant today. It's hard to believe even with your own eyes, but if you receive this report about how your army was defeated, and everyone was killed out of nowhere, you'd heavily suspect it to be some sort of enemy ruse, wouldn't you?
No, I'm sure I wouldn't believe a mere report either. The Empire's General Caligulio is hardly incompetent, but I don't think he's the kind of guy who'd opt to retreat at this point. They'd treat him like a coward if he did. Those Imperial fools aren't going to shoulder their lances until they taste defeat for themselves.
Jaine was right, and Vaughn's judgment was sound as well. Gazel was convinced he would make the same decision if he were in the Empire's shoes. He felt pity for the poor soldiers and officers who had to come along with Caligulio, but as the invaders, that was on them. Gazel was known as a wise king, but he had no intention of taking responsibility for an empire currently engaging in hostilities with him. He was not obligated to anyway. All he could do was coldly speculate on what the future would bring.
Out of the 940,000 Imperial soldiers who invaded the forest of Jura, 240,000 are already lost forever. By this point, I don't think there's any questioning Rimuru's final victory.
Vaughn wistfully agreed. That's fair, yes. It'd be pretty cute of him if he got caught off guard at this point, but Lord Rimuru is hardly that kind of buffoon. The question on everyone's mind was how much more of a sacrifice the Empire was willing to tolerate.
We will need to keep careful records of this war so we can use it as a lesson for the future. That, and we should remember all the more that we as humans must never rile a demon lord.
The whole room answered in unison, "Yes, my lord." The strength of these monsters, shattering conventional war strategy even as its sheer depths remained untapped, was now clearly something that could approach a catastrophe-sized threat. Quite fortuitous, then, that the goal of Rimuru and his cohorts was to live hand-in-hand with humanity, not dominate the world. The Empire was simply getting what it deserved, but to keep their sacrifice from going to waste, Gazel wanted to see this battle through to the end. that, and despite it all, he still had to prepare for the worst possible outcome. If Rimuru ever turned against him, Gazel prayed that would never happen, but what if it did? What should they do? Gazel had boasted to his closest confidants that he trusted Rimuru, but by that, he only meant Rimuru as a person. As the leader of a nation, he also had to take the best measures possible to prevent hurting his people. Just because he did not have a good answer yet did not mean he was excused from pondering the question. Taking on a Primal was a fool's errand, and they were not much more likely to ever defeat Veldora. His hands were tied, really. Faced with a question far too difficult to ever answer, Gazel began to feel a headache coming on. Back in Tempest Control Center, I did remember saying something like, "Give your all." Yes, don't worry, I wasn't losing my marbles yet. It had only been around 3 years since I was reincarnated even. No need to worry about that. But still. As I watched the big screen, I began to wonder if those words were really mine after all. Did I really say that? The screen was showing my army pretty much kicking everyone's ass out there. Which was great, super, no problems there. But the content was just too much to watch. It was such a lopsided thrashing that I kept my mouth agape the whole time. Gobta was acting very cool, very non-Gobta-like, as he stormed around the battlefield and crushed tanks with his bare hands. Unified with Ranga, he both looked and raged like someone who deserved to be called part of the Big Four. And Gabiru, to his credit, had transformed into a strong-looking dragonish kind of monster, smashing up enemy ships with some kind of crazy powerful energy reaction. And not just him, everyone on Team Hiryu had undergone transformations too. I realized at once that this was Dragon Body at work, but since when had they mastered it so well? Also, that Dragon Body skill, something I left for later and never got to, was amazing. It had a time limit, and you could only be active in it for around 10 minutes, I guess. But the crazy power more than made up for the disadvantages. It would be suicide if you used it the wrong way, but it was a nice little card to add to your deck. Even Gabiru and company lost the spotlight to that giant mid-air explosion. I did not know what the heck they did, but the enemy's flagship had a thermonuclear meltdown or something, and it took out the Empire's entire airship force with it. That surprised even me, and as a result, the Empire's air power was essentially destroyed. Every single ship crashed to the ground. That kicked off a major offensive by the Tempest forces. With Gobta's and Gabiru's forces joining up, everyone could see that we had gained the upper hand in the war. Even in modern warfare, helicopters had an overwhelming advantage against tanks, and in much the same way, Team Hiryu was mostly using breath attacks from the air, inflicting heavy one-sided damage on the Empire's ground forces. They were such small targets that the tank guns were not even a threat. Really, as long as they did not hit you, it was not worth worrying about. The Empire did not just sit there and take a beating, of course. They tried fighting back several times, but we squashed every attempt they put up. The big performers there were Veyron and Zonda, under Ultima's command. Those two were definitely old demons. They seemed to have an eye for spotting the strongest among their foes, and regardless of whether they were squad captains or regular soldiers, they only chose the most powerful and tore them apart. Their butler and cook outfits, respectively, were not exactly appropriate, but for the Imperial troops, they became symbols of fear. Among the enemy's supply units, Hakuro was slashing away with his sword, offering no mercy. Apparently, some of them even tried to introduce themselves first, yelling things like, "God damn you, I am ranked 97th," but Hakuro's white blade made them spew blood before they could finish.
Forgive me. Sir Rimuru is watching this battle. He has ordered us to go at full power, and thus I can offer you no mercy.
That really was not how I meant it, but now I understood how much of a big deal it was to them. I could not really withdraw that order now. If I butted in at this point, it would just cause confusion on the field. So I took the long view and decided to watch how the battle unfolded. This turned out to be a pretty good decision. Frankly, the Imperial soldiers Veyron, Zonda, and Hakuro picked off were equal to or better than paladins in ability. Their gear was pretty insane too, even better than the spiritual armor worn by paladins. Legend, class, and quality. Looking at the big picture, they were way stronger than any of those guys, a fact that shocked me when Raphael gave me the results. I was not sure how they got this kind of equipment, but they did, and that was that. Maybe the people granted this gear were the heavily rumored Imperial Guardians. Ghidorah told me about them, this group handpicked from the best the Empire had to offer, including otherworlders. There were around 100 of them, he said, and I guess the rank stuff they mentioned was proof of their membership. If people like that had been given a chance to really strut their stuff, things might have been a lot more chaotic out there. It was smart of us to take them out before they were fully ready, just like Hakuro did. Veyron and Zonda did the same, taking action before anyone knew what was going on. They all had a good eye for spotting the most fearsome of our foes, like they had stats floating above their heads. If all their champions had bonded together, I did not think killing them would have been so simple, but it was their fault for being careless on the field. Got a problem with that? Well, they should have gone all out from the start. That, of course, could be said for us as well. If we showed any needless mercy to the enemy, there was a good chance they would take advantage of it. If that happened, the damage would have been unthinkable. I refused to let us do anything foolish like hurt a friend to rescue an enemy soldier. I could not help wanting to show a little compassion sometimes, but that would be the same as letting up because I assumed victory was in the bag. We were fighting a war here. Best to keep our minds hardened and let them all do their best until the end. So regarding the surrender I was expecting to receive from them, well, while I was admiring the exploits of Hakuro and the gang, something strange was going on in the Empire's command headquarters. Raphael reported inside my mind.
Report. Activation of the large-scale destructive magic death streak confirmed. The user is the subject Testarossa.
Hearing that, I hurriedly projected things on the big screen. There they were, Testarossa and Ultima, standing around with big smiles. Nobody else was alive. The nearly 1,000 tanks the Empire had left were silenced, all the infantry deployed around them fallen. It had to be in the tens of thousands, I estimated. Death streak, was it? That was one ridiculously dangerous spell. Raphael continued her analysis.
Understood. Death streak is a type of nuclear magic, a magical death ray that kills all living creatures. As a side effect,
Raphael was happy to explain the situation to me, but I really do not think I could be blamed for almost shouting, "Don't use that kind of dangerous magic." Ultima's nuclear blast was called nuclear flame, apparently, but this move seemed several times more dangerous. Not that Testarossa was stopping her either. Either way, the moment that spell triggered, the match was pretty much decided. There were no surviving enemy commanders left, and it was only a matter of time before we weeded out the remaining troops. So our battle with the Empire over on the Dwarven Kingdom side ended in a fantastic victory for us. The Imperial army, which we considered to be a decoy, was annihilated, literally wiped off the face of the earth, and not just in strategic terms either. It was absurd. I did not think telling them to go all out would result in something like this. Also, Benimaru was starting to act a bit scary.
If this was the result, was there any damn point to my strategy in the first place? What the hell's up with our intelligence officers down there? You said they were under your control, Sir Rimuru, but can you explain this, please?
Yes, I had been keeping a few things to myself. Benimaru did not need to yell at me with a freaky smile like that. I mean, you know, did we really have a strategy at all? And look, Benimaru, you were not the only one who wanted an explanation. In fact, I wanted to get some answers on this too. But I could not just shout out everything on my mind, so I glanced at Veldora for some assistance. He averted his eyes. I knew this in advance, but it was pointless to rely on Veldora for situations like this. The same went for Ramirez. She would not pitch in either. No, I told you, right? Those are the new guys that Diablo recruited and brought in for us.
I know they're Diablo's people.
No dancing around the topic then. Ah well, I decided to be honest and tell him everything. If it was Benimaru and Geld, I was sure that revealing these ladies were super freaky primals would be greeted with a smile and a nod. Besides, Diablo was responsible for everything related to them, so if something came up, we could discuss it then. Armed with this theory, I prepared to tell the truth. So, do you know what a primal is?
A primal?
Benimaru did not seem to. But Shuna, currently offering us some coffee, interrupted.
You're referring to the Seven Sovereigns, the source of all demons. I overheard a conversation about them the other day, so I got curious and looked it up. But I was surprised to see that Diablo is one of them.
I did not know the Primals, the origins of all demons, had such a fancy moniker. And really, why was Shuna smiling so peacefully as she unveiled all this classified information? The smell of coffee drifted across the control center, easing the tension a bit.
Oh, you didn't know, my brother? Well, it's not just Diablo. Testarossa, Carrera, and Ultima are all sovereigns of demondom as well.
They are?
They are.
Shuna's smile almost blinded me. Faced with it, Benimaru could no longer state any doubt. Seeing him fall silent like that, I thought, wow, Shuna was actually a pretty big deal, huh? I had been steeling myself to tell this horrifying secret, but having it revealed so readily was sort of a disappointment. Kinda felt better this way, though. Diablo, I want you to explain it.
Very well, Sir Rimuru. Benimaru, I must admit that I am, as she says, a primal demon.
I sipped at my coffee as I listened to Diablo's speech. Tea was great and all, but I did like me some coffee too.
All right, I understand. That certainly explains everyone's strength then. But if that's the case, I wish you had told me about it from the beginning.
Well, you know, I began. I thought people would get all scared if they knew the truth. Me and Veldora are one thing, but I didn't want you guys to have more unnecessary stuff to worry about. I was worried for my friends, so I kept quiet. I made sure to emphasize only that point. Let's not dwell on how I gave them bodies and names and stuff, if we could.
Well, I wasn't afraid of them neither.
Even Ramirez was on my side. Hopefully everyone else was not too freaked out by this.
I believe your concerns were unnecessary, Sir Rimuru. If you have accepted them, then we all welcome them as our friends.
Yes, Benimaru is right. Nobody here would discriminate against others based on strength or appearance.
Benimaru smiled as he said it, and Geld preached stone-cold fact to me. They helped me banish my worries for good. Not even Shuna had any concerns about Diablo and the rest of the demons. The fact that they were still treating each other as they always had was proof of that. Well, great then. Now I feel bad for worrying so much.
You should have more faith in us.
Exactly. But I do have to thank you for worrying about us enough to assign Carrera and the rest to us.
It was a little awkward, but I was glad Benimaru and Geld accepted it. But what about Gabiru and Gobta and the rest? They seemed to be doing fine as far as I could tell, and let's hope they continued to be.
Well, we're all getting along well with Diablo. I'm sure it'll be okay.
Shion gave him her stamp of approval, not that I was ever worried about her.
What do you mean, Shion?
I mean exactly what I said, Diablo.
Shion, my first secretary, and Diablo, my second, glared at each other. Being called a Primal sounded real pretentious, but this was how he mainly acted. Once again, I was relieved that I had worried over nothing. With that behind us, we discussed the day's events a bit longer. I assigned Testarossa and Ultima to the field army because if the enemy had a Demon Lord class threat on their side, I thought we'd be in trouble. Then, well, they put in a little too much of an effort. This was all thanks to that order I sent out, but I really did not expect everyone to go this out of control. It was just so wild, so over the top, and so cool too. They had annihilated an entire enemy army and they did not flinch even once.
Seems they got a little too excited and carried away, didn't they? I'll be sure to give them a good lesson about it later.
Diablo sounded downright cheerful. Keep it in moderation, I did not forget to add. But well, Diablo could take care of himself and I was sure he would continue educating them, again without overdoing it. Next up, we surveyed our damages. Just 2 hours after the start of battle, all the fighting was over. It looked like we had a lot of injured on our side, but the final damage report was almost unreal. A cheery voice echoed across the control center, reporting that all casualties had been fully healed. All the demons who had gone into battle had been given Tempest-made high potions, 10 per person, that allowed them to immediately heal most wounds. That even applied to people I thought were dead at first. In fact, they were only playing possum, and even their severed limbs had already been fully healed with full potions. They were playing the decoy role with serious aplomb, just as Benimaru ordered them to.
I told you, didn't I? I told you not to worry.
You sure did. And I trusted you and everyone else, of course. Everything went according to Benimaru's plan. The one random element he did not expect, apparently, was the demon's performance. As a result, despite going through a lot of potions, we did not suffer a single casualty. It was an utterly unbelievable way to win. That being said, we were not totally unscathed. It seemed Gabiru and Team Hiryu suffered some fairly serious bodily fatigue due to the side effects of the dragon body skill. I was pretty wowed by that move, but sure enough, the 10-minute time limit was not the only minus. The moment battle ended, the overexertion crashed on them like a tidal wave and they all lay prone on the ground as if paralyzed. This was not an injury per se, so potions would not help them. After taking in all those magicules and becoming so strong, maybe this was the body rejecting all that foreign matter out again. This fatigue penalty seemed to apply to all of Team Hiryu, not just Gabiru. But I was fine with that. Best to have them think, you should be glad it wasn't worse, and leave them be. It would later transpire that this paralyzing condition lasted for around 24 hours, so after some debate we decided to limit dragon body activations to no more than once every other day tops. Their full strength scored them the win this time, but invoke that move at the wrong time and it could come back to bite them. A real double-edged sword, you could say, so I advised Gabiru to be very careful with that. Next we turned our attention to the Empire's side. The Magi tank force led by Lieutenant General Gaster had 200,000 troops. Major General Faraga's Flying Combat Corps had 40,000. That, as confirmed by the wizard Ghidorah, was the size of the Imperial forces on this front. But we did not take any POWs this time. They were all dead, around 240,000 in all. What a massacre. And look, it was not that my heart did not ache over it. But when I became a demon lord, I did it by killing 20,000 people by my own hand. By this point, I guess I was just done making excuses. Either way, after killing all 240,000 members of this force, I guess their souls were being offered within me. A little while after battle began, I started feeling the souls accumulating at a frantic pace. This must be what collecting souls from the people working for you feels like, that classic demon lord perk. Thanks to that, I had an exact grasp of just how many enemy soldiers we beat. But I mean really, this many human souls? 10,000 was enough to upgrade me from regular to true demon lord. What would 240,000 do to me? The answer? Nothing. The moment I awakened to true demon lord, that must have been the end of the road. Makes sense. Otherwise, Guy Crimson would have been busy eradicating the entire human race, reaping souls all over the place. He kept the needless slaughter to a minimum because he instinctively knew there was nowhere higher to go from here. That was when I received an unexpected notice from Raphael.
Report. The amount of acquired souls has exceeded the set limit. It is now possible to awaken subordinates connected to you via your soul lineage. The following people are eligible.
Pretty outrageous even by Raphael standards. Apparently, if you gave a set amount of souls to a qualified receiver, you could awaken them. I assumed capturing excess souls was pointless, but even if they did not affect your own evolution, you could still use them to evolve the people under you. As Raphael put it, several people close to me had met the requirements for this awakening. Giving them the souls I had acquired would, it seemed, grant them the same kind of awakened strength that I enjoyed as a true demon lord. The number of souls required was 100,000. Sheesh. I did not think 10 times would be needed to awaken someone else. No wonder nobody else knew about this until now. Maybe someone like Guy did, but who could say? Even if he did, it was not like he could execute on it all the time. Besides, it was a lot easier to befriend a demon lord and have him boost you up than try to do it yourself. Maybe that was how the Walpurgis got its start, a gathering of the big bosses, a way for Guy to see who was really worthy of joining up. But maybe there was some other reason for it. Maybe I was giving him too much credit, and he really did not know after all. I could not dismiss that notion. At the very least, 100,000 souls was nothing to sniff at. It was killing an entire city, basically, so you could not be casual with it. Anyway, right then, I had around 250,000 extra souls on me, which would let me awaken 2 people. My pool of qualified subordinates was Ranga, Benimaru, Shion, Gabiru, Geld, Diablo, Testarossa, Ultima, Carrera, Kumara, Zegian, and Adelman, 12 in all. Raphael presented the choice as a simple prompt: create a soul corridor to evolve a subordinate, yes or no. Based on how Raphael put it, I guess I could awaken people even if I was not physically nearby. A soul corridor would allow my target and me to be unaffected by time and space, kind of like how Veldora and I used to be. It would also strengthen the bond between us, which was not a bad thing either. So what now? In my case, awakening made me incomparably stronger than before. It evolved my unique skill, the Great Sage, into the ultimate skill, Raphael, Lord of Wisdom. If someone like Benimaru could evolve to that level, then I had no reason to hesitate. But hang on, what was the deal with that soul lineage thing? If I had to guess, it referred to the soul connection we had after I gave those people names. Naming a monster causes an evolution, and I definitely was not shy about doing that all the time, but I also knew it was dangerous. I was not afraid to name with confidence because Raphael was now assessing the safety risks for me. Get it wrong and I would be stripped of all my power and maybe even die. That or be permanently weakened. In my case, I had Beelzebub's stomach, a tremendously useful skill, and I used it to store any excess magicules I had. If I was short, I could apparently borrow some from Veldora too. Either way, Raphael managed all that, and I did not need to worry about a thing. So unfair, isn't it? Normally, you needed your own magicules to name something, which made it no small feat. I bet that was even true for Guy. That was why so few people were really connected to others at the Soul. But as far as I was concerned, my friends were irreplaceable. I meant that too. And I did not mind experimenting on myself, but I was not going to use my friends as guinea pigs. Raphael was recommending this option to me, so I did not think it was dangerous, or I like to believe that. But something told me this was playing with some serious fire. Besides, I did not even know who I should pick, and there were a bunch of other problems too. If magicule energy was the main factor, I really thought Soe would qualify as well, but he did not. That made me wonder about the conditions for staging an awakening. Everything about it was so unclear, which really gave me pause. During my Harvest Festival, there was a long period of dormancy before I evolved, known as my initiation. There was no guarantee that would not happen again this time, so I really wanted everything worked out in advance. Most of all, however, this war was not over yet. The Imperial Army's main force, some 700,000 of them, was on the march toward our capital. Going on wacky adventures during such urgent times really was not a good idea. So the answer was no for now. Let's leave this matter until things settled down. I ordered the goblins to go on salvage duty, collecting the intact tanks and surviving airship wreckage for me. Gabiru and the dragon Utes would be knocked out for a while longer, so I had the wyvern riders transport all the stuff they got over to the Dwarven Kingdom. I wanted Team Hiryu to have all the recovery time I could give them. Instead, I sent the blue numbers to join up with the goblins. This was on Benimaru's suggestion. He said there was no need for them to hurry back to the capital, since even if they did, they would not be in time for the final battle. Gazel, to his credit, also asked if I needed any reinforcements. I told him we had no problems for now. The dwarves, too, were still in the middle of war. Hostilities at the central entrance were done, but the east exit bordering the Empire was still staked out by an Imperial force of some 60,000. Ghidorah identified them as Yuuki's division, deployed as a diversionary tactic. But we did not know what was to come, so I really did not want to drop the ball with them. I was sure Gazel could take care of that, and in fact, I was sure he was fully on the case, that very minute. Our mission right then was to settle the score with the Empire's main force. The opening battle was a huge victory for us, but the enemy still had a force far too enormous to downplay. In terms of numbers, we were at an overwhelming disadvantage, but my staff could not have been more motivated. Shion could not wait to get cracking, even saying stuff like, "I can't let those demons hog the spotlight. I have to go out there and show them what real strength means." She sounded so frustrated. I almost wanted to ask exactly who her enemy was in this war. "Aren't you supposed to be my bodyguard?" The moment I pointed that out, she regained her composure in a big hurry. Nothing good comes from being too eager to fight, after all. But Shion was not the only one raring to go among us. Carrera's cheeks were flushed as she flew into the control room. I had ordered her to stand by with the rest of the 2nd Army Corps, but I guess the demons were all using thought communication with each other. Her fellow demons boasting about all the murder they committed must have been more than she could stand. Still, I could not have her working solo right then. Carrera burst out, "My lord! Ultima's been bragging shamelessly, saying our forces achieved a huge victory in the first round. Ooh, I can't wait to get my turn. Would it be all right if I went over and put in a few choice words?"
A few choice words.
Benimaru knew Carrera was a Primal, but he still dealt with her the same way. Maybe I really had been worrying too much. Carrera gave him the most endearing smile. Yes, I thought I could give them a little nuclear magic as a gift. Jaine, the original Yellow, sure lived up to her reputation.
Denied.
Carrera, please be patient until further orders. Your actions take on meaning only when they're applied at the most critical moment.
Carrera was not too happy about that, but she had no intention of disobeying Benimaru. She reluctantly nodded at Geld's rebuke. All right, I just wanted to show you what I could do, but maybe there's a time when that'll be more effective, huh? I'll sit tight and wait. Glad she saw things our way. It looked like she respected what Geld had to say. Maybe they were a better pair than I thought.
Carrera, life is about more than going on the rampage, you know. It's only when we become a sword for our leader that we can truly shine.
Carrera answered Shion, sounding convinced. Yes, Shion, I understand you. Maybe I've been a little too hasty, huh? I'm going to go cool off a little. Are you really one to talk, Shion? I thought. It was a nice thing to say and all, but coming from her it sounded so unconvincing. Weren't you the one who wanted to go on a big rampage just now? But let's hold back on that. It would be a bad idea to rehash the conversation when it was over now. I gave Shion a judgmental frown as Carrera left, so morale definitely was not a problem. On our side, we had the forces inside the Labyrinth as well as the rested 2nd Army Corps. Everyone from my top officials to the soldiers deep down the chain of command seemed to be in high spirits, eager to give it their all. They must have heard my orders. The Empire, meanwhile, totaled 700,000 troops. We would never compete in numbers, but this was quality over quantity. The other side might still have had some strong characters lurking in the background, but we had one killer defense mechanism in the Labyrinth. The key to victory is gonna lie in the Labyrinth. Veldora, Ramirez, I'm counting on you guys.
Yes, of course. Do not fear. I'll take care of everything.
Right, exactly. We're all backing you up, so you just rest easy.
Their eager replies soothed my heart. The important thing here was how we would avoid casualties, and luring the enemy into the Labyrinth was the best way to do that. Inside the dungeon, we could reduce the wear and tear on our army down to 0, and that was not all. We could also add the monsters of the Labyrinth to our forces, letting us make up for any numerical disadvantages without much hassle. Count the lower-level monsters and the total number would add up to several 100,000. Then we'll just have to see how much the Empire believed in Yuuki's cajoling, huh?
Isn't it the other way around? You can't trust him, and that's exactly why he's led them to have their suspicions of him.
Ah, that does make a lot of sense. I was sure Benimaru was right. If you looked at Yuuki as an enemy, he was quite a nuisance. We might have been in a temporary partnership, but there was no way to trust him as an ally. Maybe the feeling was mutual on the Imperial side?
Someone that fishy. Maybe it's safer to have him infiltrate the enemy instead of fight with...
That was an unusually accurate statement from Shion.
At least we don't have to expend any effort worrying about whether we'll be betrayed. The Imperials, on the other hand, probably don't consider Yuuki to be a complete ally. They'll be wary of him, suspicious of whatever he has to say. In other words, they don't really know how the 60,000 troops by the east exit of Dwargon are going to act. The Empire might make their strike there, so we'd best tell Gazel to be on his guard.
Knowing King Gazel, I don't think we'll need to worry. But no, there's nothing more annoying than an untrustworthy ally. If I were you, I'd be the first to crush him. I had already told King Gazel about Yuuki, and like Benimaru said, I was sure he took all necessary measures without me checking up on him. Our main concern should have been the Empire's main force. Even as we spoke, they were attacking from multiple sides, trying to surround us. The only thing left in our city was that huge gate, so there was no great need to panic, although we still could not help being nervous. My main concern was that they would skip Tempest entirely and instead attack Farminus, the new kingdom established by Yom. He had people like Raisin and Gruseth around to defend it, but that nation honestly did not have the wherewithal to wage large-scale war at the moment. We were still in the middle of providing them support as they reformed their ways, so we really did not want it to become a battlefield. It would be up to us to provide reinforcements, of course, and that would really complicate matters as far as I was concerned. So along those lines, we were glad it did not seem to be turning out that way. Regardless, we could not let our guards down. If the Empire did not trust Yuuki and instead opted to whiz right by us and into Blumund, then we would have Geld's force attack them from the rear. It would be easy to send the second core over with my teleport spell, but we would still have a ground war on our hands. The second core would get far less support from the Labyrinth, and I was sure it would be a tough battle. We should have been able to recruit a good number of volunteers from the Labyrinth, but even so, we could not force monsters out of there if they did not want to go, so the numbers would have to be smaller. Besides, if we fought on the ground, we could not leverage the Labyrinth's features at all, and thus we would have to be prepared for serious casualties. Ideally, we really wanted the enemy to enter the Labyrinth. Bringing the battle there in Benimaru's eyes was both the safest route and the one most likely to succeed. If we fought on the ground, we would lose our advantage in the Labyrinth. We would have to fight them head-on on a level playing field, which was how it usually was, of course. But in war, the key to victory was all in building an edge for yourself. I did not think the Labyrinth was exactly fair or whatever, but if we won, then hey, we were in the right. So while the Labyrinth would hopefully serve as the main battlefield, our basic strategy was still the same even if we fought on the ground. Job 1 for us was to ferret out the strongest fighters on the opposing side, and just like how we used the goblins as bait for that before, we would use Geld's force this time. That common core was in each of Benimaru's proposed strategies. Really, I guess they were doing this to protect me, their supreme general. I cared deeply for all my friends here, and Benimaru and the rest put me first just as much. Even more, in fact. I did not want them to get killed for my sake, but Benimaru was much more of a tactician than an amateur like me. He kept damage to almost nothing in the previous battle even. So as long as I left everything to him, I could just sit back in my chair and relax. That, and I wanted to keep trying to make people feel secure in relying on me.
Route confirmed. The next episode and full playlist are ready.
Then don't stop here. Keep watching in story order and subscribe before the next part drops.